to ask you some true or false questions. True or false? You once sold a ceremonial sword that you won in the Kumite to attempt to buy the freedom of enslaved children.
I think that's true.
True or false? You once threatened to throw Jean-Claude Van Damme off a building top.
True.
True or false? Your military records were rewritten to eradicate certain events and things in your records.
True.
True or false? You remain an active undercover off-the-books employee of the CIA.
That's a very good question.
True or false? You used to use a double to answer media interviews for you while you were clandestinely abroad. I hope I'm speaking to the real Frank Dux right now.
The 1988 avant-garde film Bloodsport was, without a doubt, a groundbreaking cinematic milestone that touched the hearts of an entire generation. As tremendous of an artistic achievement as the movie was, however, there is one aspect about it that has been plaguing film scholars for years. That bizarre end caption that lists the world record set by the story's protagonist, Frank Dux. When we first saw that, I think most of us had the same reaction. Wait, that was supposed to be a true story? Yes, as unbelievable as it may seem, Bloodsport is actually supposed to be a biopic. There really is a man named Frank Dux who claimed to have learned the dim mock from a ninja master as a child, and then fought in an underground no-holds-barred tournament called the Kumite. And although Hollywood has a notorious reputation for fudging the facts in so-called true stories, this particular film is actually pretty faithful to the claims made by Mr. Dux. In fact, I'd go so far to say that Bloodsport was one of the most honest biographical films ever made. If not for the fact that Frank fabricated every single detail in the entire story. Yes, my devoted listeners, we have arrived. The worst martial arts fraud in human history. Truth be told, I'm not even sure if I should be making this video, because I have a sneaking suspicion that Frank Dux isn't actually a human being. I genuinely think he might in fact be the genetically combined form of all the other frauds I covered before. Like Bart Vale, he's mostly famous for fake fights. Like Ashita Kim, he claims to be a ninja master of unparalleled ability. Like Raphael Tori, he possesses an extensive false military pedigree and allegedly has a predilection to take hits out on people he doesn't like. And like George Dillman, he claims to be master of the unholy art of the death touch. The man truly is the Megazord of frauds. Unlike other charlatans of his ilk who just make a handful of claims that need to be debunked, Dux has crafted an entire mythos of bullshit. So prolific of a liar is he that for the first time I actually have to divide my video up into chapters to properly deal with each set of claims he's made. It's the only way I think I could make this video without succumbing to vertigo. And so, without further ado, here it is. The thorough and systematic destruction of your childhood.
Okay, USA. Okay, USA.
The narrative of Frank Dux' fantasy life began in California when he was 13 years old after meeting a ninja master by the name of Senzo Tiger Tanaka, also known as Takizo Tanaka. According to Dux' autobiography, The Secret Man, Tanaka was a former Japanese intelligence officer and Kumite champion who practiced a form of ninjutsu known as Koga Yamabushi. The two supposedly became acquainted in the locker room of a judo tournament in which Dux had competed, and after a thorough bout of molestation, I assume, Senzo recruited Dux to train the art of the Shadow Warrior with his nephews. As I discussed in my Ashita Kim video, modern schools of ninjutsu have maybe only a flimsy at best connection to the actual ninjas of feudal Japan. Masaki Hatsumi, the most respected instructor of ninjutsu in the world today, alleges to possess a lineage that stretches back to 3 different historical schools of the art, but he's never actually had any of the documents he's basing this claim on verified as authentic by Japan's top Koryu associations. In any case, Koga Yamabushi, despite supposedly having a lineage older than 1,000 years, is not a recognized form of ninjutsu by anybody else in the LARPing community, and was completely unheard of before Frank Dux hit the scene. Senzo Tiger Tanaka, likewise, was also completely unknown before Dux, despite supposedly being a world-famous teacher. Nobody in the ninjutsu world had ever heard of him, and to this date nobody besides Frank has ever claimed to train with him. According to Ancestry.com and other sources, there was indeed a Japanese immigrant by the name of Senzo Tanaka who lived in California around the time Dux was a child, and who died in 1975, the same year Frank claims his master passed away. Some Dux supporters have tried to use this as evidence that Dux's ninja master was real, but several key details don't match up. Frank claims Senzo Tiger Tanaka was an international super spy who worked in Japan, England, and China before finally immigrating to Los Angeles in 1956. The man I found on Ancestry was a farmer who immigrated to the United States in 1910, never appeared to have lived in LA, and was interred during World War II when Dux's mentor was still supposed to be living abroad. An interesting enough life, I suppose, but not quite the man Frank described. Perhaps Dux happened to meet this dude when he was a teenager and then attributed all that espionage and ninja stuff to him later on. Or perhaps he just straight up ripped off the 1967 James Bond film You Only Live Twice, based on the Ian Fleming novel of the same name, which prominently featured a character by the name of Tiger Tanaka who commanded a cabal of ninjas. When presented with this suspicious coincidence in an interview for a 1988 LA Times article, Dux responded, Ian Fleming often based his characters on real people. Yeah, as you'll see time and time again, Frank Dux apparently went to the George Dillman school of saying the dumbest possible thing when confronted by a tough question. Moving on, though, Dux claimed to have studied with Tanaka for about 6 years before competing in the Kumite at the age of 19. Among the training methods Senzo supposedly put him through included having him spar with his nephews using live-bladed weapons, doing household chores to train blocking techniques like Daniel-san from the Karate Kid, tying stake to his body and having a full-grown Akita attack him, and having him do dynamic tension exercises. This line really stood out to me when I read it in his book. The only other time in my life I've ever come across the phrase dynamic tension was in those old Charles Atlas advertisements that used to appear in comic books. I seriously doubt Dux would have picked up terminology like that from a Japanese martial arts master in the late 60s. As you'll see later on, this isn't the only odd comic book similarity in Dux's story. Before we get to that, though, we have to discuss one more imaginary trial Dux says Tanaka had put him through. Having him train with a Green Beret at the age of 16 to groom him for a life as an intelligence operative.